Welcome back. You're still watching Network Africa on Channels Television. Well, today is the last day of the month, and it's also the World Day Against Trafficking of Persons. Now, from the UN statement, which was released today, what it's saying is this, that at any given time, an estimated 2.5 million people are trapped in modern-day slavery. Men, women, and children fall into the hands of traffickers, both in their own countries and abroad. Every country in the world is affected by human trafficking, whether as a country of origin, transit, or destination for victims. In 2010, the General Assembly adopted the Global Plan of Action to Combat Trafficking in Persons, urging governments worldwide to take coordinated and consistent measures to defeat the scourge. The plan calls for integrating the fight against human trafficking into the UN's broader programs in order to boost development and strengthen security worldwide. One of the crucial provisions in the plan is the establishment of a UN voluntary trust fund for victims of trafficking, especially women and children. Well, concerning this day, we have what the UN Secretary General, Mr. Ban Ki-moon, is saying. The Secretary General says this first World Day Against Trafficking in Persons is a call to action to end this crime and give hope to the victims who often live unrecognized among us. To stop the traffickers, we must sever funding pipelines and seize assets. He says he urges all countries to ratify and fully implement the United Nations Convention Against Transnational Organized Crime and its protocol on trafficking in persons, end of quote. Now, we have an estimate for you concerning the top countries which have identified victims of trafficking. Unfortunately, Nigeria tops this list with 777 people. Then Ghana comes in second at 182, Senegal 155, Ethiopia 135, Rwanda 78, Gabon 15, Namibia 14, and Angola 13. This is according to the USTIP report, which was released today concerning the World Day Against Trafficking in Persons. Well, we're joined on the program now by journalist and blogger Sana Kamara. He is a Gambian journalist now living in exile following his reporting on human trafficking in the Gambia. Sana, thank you very much for joining us on the program.
Thank you for having me.
Yes. Now, you've had a chance to interact with victims or persons of trafficking, who are victims of trafficking. And in truth, it's really not all the time that we see a case where people have actually been forced. Some go into it voluntarily. So based on the interaction you've had with these people, what actually leads them to take that decision?
It is not one of theory, because some of them actually go voluntarily, but also they are being deceived into promises or offerings that actually don't exist. They are not aware of this, and until the time that they get to the destination countries, they kind of realize that, well, this was not what was promised us, and by then it's already too late to go back, because you are bound by a contract between you and the employers, closed against. And once you reach these destination countries, they confiscate your travel documents. You don't have a way of going back. All you have to do is just go along with the time, which most of the time is not favorable to them. That's what is the other side of this voluntary, people going on trafficking voluntarily. It will hardly happen for somebody to walk into your own grave, I would say. So it's more serious than they are telling us what's happening out there.
Okay, well, so now...
Usually people... Okay.
Okay, when people actually get out of situations, at least those ones who are lucky enough, do they recover from the experience, or is it one which actually scars people for life?
It's both, I would say, And remember, there are those who might not even recover, or may not even emerge from these situations. Take a case of a young woman last year, in March, an Ethiopian lady who had to commit suicide in Lebanon because of how she was molested sexually. as a way of disciplining her because she was not fully cooperative with her employer. You know, yeah. So these are situations that happen frequently. In a situation like the Gambia, most of these young ladies, because of the society we live in, even whereas they are sexually exploited, didn't want to speak up about what they've gone through. Instead, they always want to keep it secret. And as a result, they have some kind of internal trauma that they live with for a very long time.
Oh, well, so now thank you very much. Just before I let you go, based on what we know about what you do, being a journalist, and you're now living in exile, reporting on, based on the report you did on human trafficking in the Gambia, can you give us an estimate of the figures concerning those who are the victims of trafficking from your country?
There is no official figures that have been released regarding the victims because it's a very disorganized industry in the Gambia.
Okay.
The first thing is the government has been in denial, you know, and then based on my own investigations, I think we are having thousands of Gambians,
wow,
young ladies and young men who are being forced into trafficking as a result of situations they face back home to destination countries, whether it be in Europe or mainly in the Middle East. But there is no specific figures that we can give right now as it stands.
Well, Sana, thank you so much for your time. Thank you very much for joining us on the program. We appreciate your time. Thank you.
All right, you're welcome.
Now, just a reminder of what we're looking at right now. Today is the World Day Against Trafficking in Persons. We gave you a rundown of the figures. In Nigeria has 777, Ghana has 182, Senegal 155, Ethiopia 135, Rwanda 78, Gabon 15, Namibia 14, and Angola 13. That's based on the USTIP report, which was released today in order to draw attention to what's happening concerning trafficking. Now, we're joined in studio by the Zonal Commander, NAPTIP Lagos Command, Mr. Joseph Alani Famaki. NAPTIP is the National Agency for the Prohibition of Trafficking in Persons. Mr. Famaki, thank you very much for joining us on the program.
Thank you for inviting us.
Oh, it's definitely a pleasure. And I'd just like to ask you the significance of what's happening today.
Thank you. Human trafficking is a global problem. And the United Nations came up with a convention on transnational organized crime and followed closely with a protocol to punish and suppress trafficking in person. Considering the fact that trafficking in person is the movement of a person from one point to the other for the purpose of exploitation. Exploitation could be sexual exploitation, it could be labor exploitation. And the menace of this act is a global problem. So remembering today as a day set aside by United Nations to eradicate this act of humanity to man is important.
Yes. Now, based on the figures which were released by which we saw from the USTIP report, saying 777, there were 777 victims of trafficking from Nigeria alone this year. Would you say this is an overestimate or an underestimate?
Actually, we cannot confirm the veracity of that figure because these are victims rescued from different parts of the world. From what we know, Nigeria is a source country, is a transit, and is also a destination country. That figure may not be bloated, but there is the need for us to work to reduce the menace of trafficking in Nigeria.
Now I'm very interested in what the UN Secretary General, Mr. Ban Ki-moon, had to say. Would you say, now in his words, he says trafficking against persons is a call to action to end this crime and give hope to the victims who often live unrecognized among us. He said in order to stop the traffickers, we must sever funding pipelines and also seize assets. Would you say that this statement covers the best way to deal with this situation?
Yes, I believe the statement of the Secretary General of United Nations covered the best way to deal with the menace of trafficking in person. Trafficking in person is the third most profitable business, coming immediately after drugs and arms trafficking. Considering the enormous wealth, the only way to deprive traffickers of what they are doing is to confiscate, to go after the ill-gotten wealth from trafficking. And so that is what NAPTIP is doing. That is why the law of Nigeria, the law of trafficking in Nigeria, which was enacted in 2003, amended in 2005, was repealed in 2015, and a new law came into effect on the 26th of March 2015. The law has strengthened the capacity of NAPTIP to deal with cases of human trafficking. It has also given us more power to go after the assets of traffickers and confiscate their property, so as to serve as a deterrent to others.
Now, I really have to ask you at this point, Mr. Famaki, is it based on the cases you've seen, do we have more people going into it voluntarily or unknowingly?
Most of the victims of human trafficking, they are trafficked based on deception. Mm-hmm. Sometimes some consent to going for prostitution outside, but they are unaware of what they will be used for. A prostitute in Nigeria who is approached and told a sweet part of story in the European countries, unknown to him or her, she will not be given the money she's going to make in Europe. She will not also be allowed to go to the road and solicit for men on her own volition. She's expected to pay over 50 to 60,000 euro to regain her freedom. If you look at what 50,000 euro translates into Nigerian money, it's about 11 million. So she's expected to sleep with about 10 to 15 men per day in order to pay that money. So it is not something done out of one's volition.
Well, Mr. Famaki, thank you very much for joining us on the program and for shedding more light on that unfortunate topic. But thank you very much. We appreciate your time. Thank you so much. Mr. Joseph Alani Famaki is the Zonal Commander, NAPTIP Lagos Command. Now, just before we go, we're going to be looking at the breaking news which we brought to you at the start of the bulletin. It's actually good news. The Central Bank of Nigeria has extended the deadline for bank verification number, that's BVN registration, to October the 31st this year. Now, tomorrow, we're going to be looking at what the United Nations is accusing the South Sudan government forces of in terms of abusing and burning women. At this point, we'd like to say thank you so much for watching Network Africa. Feel free to reach out to us either via email or Twitter. The address and handle are right there on your screen. Thank you very much for being a part of the show. I'm Cynthia Are. Bye for now.